Claudia, I think we're good to go. That's great. Good morning, everyone. I will now call the July 18th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting to order. The time is 10 a.m. Madam Clerk, could you please provide us an overview of the meeting procedures?
Good morning. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be available to the public for playback on our website in accordance with Council Policy 3.12. Committee of the Whole is the initial venue for council review of information to ensure that council can debate and vote on issues at a future council meeting. No voting takes place on bylaws or resolutions during Committee of the Whole. This meeting is being conducted through the city's One Meeting platform. However, we are experiencing issues with the PrimeGov solution for live meeting management that are still being addressed by the vendor. In the interim, we will not be using the system for voting and speaker management purposes. Instead, council has been provided with voting cards, green for in favor, red for opposed, yellow for point of order. I will manually take note of the votes and log them into the system. To be put on the speaker list, please physically raise your hand so that the chair can add you to the list. For members of the public who would like to speak during community forum, if you are participating electronically, please use the raise hand icon. And when you are called upon, turn on your camera and clearly state your name and city of residence before beginning your comments. If you are attending the meeting in person, please come forward to the podium when the chair invites speakers and clearly state your name and city of residence before beginning your comments.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And I'd like to start out in a good way by acknowledging that the City of Maple Ridge carries out its business on the traditional and ceded territory of the Katzie First Nation and the Kwantlen First Nation. And now we're looking for a motion to approve the agenda, please. And that has been moved by Mayor Rumi and seconded by Councilor Carreras. And all those in favor, please. And the motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
The next item on the agenda is adoption of the minutes.
Thank you. And we have the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of July the 4th, 2023. Are there any amendments to the agenda? No amendments. And so calling for a motion to adopt the minutes is circulated, moved by Councilor Dewick and seconded by Councilor Schiller. Thank you. And also now calling for a vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
The next item on the agenda is item 5.1, 2022-332-SP, 11742 Street Soil Deposit Permit Application. Staff are in attendance to present the application to council.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. This is my first opportunity to present in front of you. So I want to introduce myself. I'm Mike Pym, one of the environmental planners here with the environment section of the planning department. With me is Thomas Liu, environmental technician, who will assist me in the report presentation if needed as well. So the application for a soil deposit permit application is for a property that is located within the agricultural land reserve. It is currently zoned RS3 and designated agriculture. Site is 3.68 hectares in size. And the purpose for the soil deposit permit application is for landscaping purposes. There are water courses to the east and west of the property and along the north. So this application is a retroactive application. The property owner deposited 20 loads of soil material on the property. The intent was for landscaping purposes. Again, the property is within the agricultural land reserve. This application comes to council under sections 20.3 and 25, subsection 3 of the Agricultural Land Commission Act. That requires council's approval to forward the application onto the Agricultural Land Commission for approval and their consideration. The yellow hatched area on the left aerial view is the approximate area of deposit. And in the right side of the screen, you'll see the general location of where that fill was placed, where the truck and machine are. The location of the soil material is outside of any sensitive areas. Environment staff aren't concerned with the location itself, and the intended use for landscaping doesn't deter from the agricultural use of the property. So the recommendation from staff is that the application for a soil deposit permit, soil use permit, as the language used by the Agricultural Land Commission Act, under sections 20.3 and 25 subsection 3 of the Agricultural Land Commission Act for the property at 11742 260th Street be approved and be forwarded to the Agricultural Land Commission for their review and approval.
Thank you, Mr. Pim. And just to check with Madam Clerk, we need a motion to move this to the council meeting. I'm looking for a motion, please, to move this to the next council meeting, moved by Councillor Youssef and seconded by Councillor Duick. Thank you. And are there any questions from the floor? I'm going to start a list. I see many. So I'm looking for questions. I see Councillor Youssef, followed by Councillor Schiller and Mayor Rumi. Please, Councillor Youssef.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to staff for the presentation. Through you, Madam Chair, to staff, the 20 truckloads that have already been deposited on the property, is that within the, that sounds like a lot. Is that within the parameters of landscaping in this case? And secondly, now that it's already been deposited, is it our jurisdiction to look after the quality of the soil? And if so, how do we go about that now retroactively that the soil's already been deposited?
Through the chair, for a property this size, the amount of material, it's approximately under 30 centimeters. So in terms of, there's a bit of a general slope to that area where they were depositing it. They wanted to flatten the area out a little bit further. We would consider it landscaping for the use on this property. In terms of the soil quality, they did submit a soil quality assessment, and the material was observed by Thomas Liu on site. And the material looked like a good quality topsoil.
So, thank you, Madam Chair. Those are my questions, please.
Thank you, Councillor Youssef.
you.
And moving on to Councillor Schiller, please.
Thank you, Chair. And through you to staff, I'm just looking for a bit of context here. You mentioned this was an after the fact application, which leads me to believe that this happened without a permit. And then maybe you can just tell me sort of how the city got involved.
If I can ask Thomas Liu to come up as part of our enforcement practice.
Lots of steps. Good morning, Mayor and Council. My name is Thomas Liu. I'm the environmental technician. Through the chair, this is my first opportunity to present, so I apologize for the faux pas. Through the chair, that I found the trucks just as part of my routine everyday work driving to this area. So I just stopped in and basically inquired what was going on. And essentially that's what started the process. I gave the applicant under the bylaw that he has the right to apply, or he could remove it. And this was the choice that he's taken.
Thank you very much, Thomas. And don't worry, we're all learning together. And so, okay, now we're looking at getting the permit in place, which makes sense. I'm just wondering, is there any, in a situation like this, is there any other consequence that the city enforces for this work, for this happening without a permit? Are there any fines that are levied, or are there any other tools that could apply here?
Through the chair. So when the city rewrote our soil deposit bylaw and council approved in 2018, the residents really wanted to make sure that there was a penalty for after for any kind of unpermitted material deposited. So we have two options. One is a fine. The other one is we apply an administrative fee, which is an enforcement fee because it does take extra staff time to go after the fact. So we allow either or, depending on the extent of disturbance and whether it's in a sensitive area, non-sensitive area, whether it's something we might or might not approve. So in this instance, because it's also within the Agricultural Land Reserve and has to go to the ALC, their application fee is $1,500. So it's quite an extensive fee for a project of this size. So they do also have to pay the administrative fee of $350 through our bylaw. So there is an additional punitive fee for this kind of work.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pim. So the landowner then is responsible for the $1,500 application fee to the ALC as well as a $350 fine to the city. Is that correct?
Through the chair, the $1,500, $750 stays with the city, $750 goes to the Agricultural Land Commission. And then the $350 is a punitive fee. It's not considered a fine or a ticket.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's just my concern is that I appreciate that all this takes up time from staff and I just want to make sure that that's being addressed. So thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Mayor Rumi, please.
Thank you very much. And through the chair to staff, mine is more a process question. Did they know that they were going against the bylaw, number one? And if they did, obviously that's where the punitive parts will come in. Or did they not? And that's more along the lines of, have we done enough to communicate? What does that process look like?
Through the chair, I'll have Thomas Luke come up because I know he had discussions with the owner.
Through the chair, the landowner was not aware of the bylaw at the time. So I did provide an explanation. Most of the contractors that work here do understand the bylaw. So sometimes we will choose to penalize the contractors. But in this case, I had full cooperation. So we felt that the administrative surcharge on the permit fees was adequate.
Mr. Goddard, please. Thank you, Ms. Mayor Rumi.
Thank you. Through the chair. It's a tradition that we try and seek compliance with our bylaws always first with applicants when we meet them or an issue comes up. So the first goal is to get compliance with the bylaws. And then if we do not get compliance, then we would go proceeding with a fine or some further steps. This applicant was willing to recognize the problem, make an application, and that's why we're here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goddard.
Thank you. For me, it's just about, are we making it easy for them to figure this out, or, are there challenges and hoops? That's something we may be able to work on. But it sounds like you're satisfied that they just really had no idea. So that's fine. Thank you very much. No further questions.
Thank you, Mayor Rumi. And looking around the Zoom and around the floor for any further questions. And seeing none, I would like to call for a vote, please, of moving this item to the next council meeting. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
The next item on the agenda is item 5.2, 2022-140-SP, 27102 106th Avenue, soil deposit permit application. Staff are in attendance to present the application to council.
Okay, morning, Mayor and Council again. For this application, again, the soil deposit application is for a property with, I think, agricultural land reserve. The property is currently zoned RS3, designated agriculture under the OCP. Property size is 1.21 hectares, and the purpose of the application, and this is for also a retroactive soil deposit permit application, was for the creation of a motocross track on the property. So there's a water course to the west, but it's far enough away that this application doesn't impact that water course. So currently, the tenant previously deposited 300 truckloads onto the property without a permit. Again, the soil was deposited for the purpose of constructing a motocross track for their children to use. As the property is within the agricultural land reserve, this application falls under sections 20.3 and 25 subsection 3 of the Agricultural Land Commission Act. It requires a soil use application to the Agricultural Land Commission and requires council support and the ALC approval. The material was deposited, you can see on the photo on the right-hand side. A track has been laid, and there's also some piles of material on the left side of the photo. That area is roughly the yellow hatched area on the left aerial photo. And their site plan from the applicant is the center picture. So because the material deposited isn't in support of farming, has the potential to degrade the soils on the property through compaction, and just the type of material brought in wasn't decent, good quality topsoil in support of farming. That staff's recommendation that the application for a soil deposit permit or soil use permit under sections 20.3 and 25 subsection 3 of the Agricultural Land Commission Act for the property at 27-102 106 Avenue be denied and not be forwarded to the Agricultural Land Commission.
Thank you for your presentation. Looking for a motion, please, and move this to the next council meeting, moved by Mayor Rumi and second by Councillor Youssef. Thank you for that. Looking for questions from Zoom and from around the floor. First up, Councillor Dewick and then Councillor Youssef, please. Councillor Dewick.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just clarification, in the report or online, it says 30 truckloads, but you said 300. So is it 30 or is it 300?
Through the chair, my apologies, it's 30 truckloads.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dewick. Councillor Youssef, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to staff again for the presentation. When looking at the report under the environmental implications, it says that if invasive species are observed associated with the deposit of the soil, the applicant will be responsible for the removal and treatment of these species. In this case, will that be the owner of the property or the tenant who's responsible for that?
Through the chair, ultimately would be the property owner, but as the tenant is there, I would expect the tenant and the property owner to work together.
And it would be through the chair to staff, it would be the same, I'm assuming, for contaminants as well, that ultimately would rest with the owner, and the type of agreement that they have with the tenant is whether or not they would cover liabilities of this type. If this application, let's say, was, again, through the chair, respectfully through the staff, if this application was to be denied in its current form, but then if they were to apply retroactively as, or the recommendation, I should say, from staff was to proceed with this application, would we be able to put a covenant in place as the municipality to then ensure that the soil that is deposited meets our standards, or those that would be of the ALC in this case, as they would have jurisdiction over it?
Through the chair. So for the first question, any kind of contamination issues, again, would be the responsibility of the property owner and would stay with them, assuming they would work with the tenant as the current resident on the property. Or we haven't required them to do a full assessment yet, because we're waiting. If this does happen to go to the LC, they may approve it or deny. And before we would issue the final permit, we would make sure the soil was appropriate for the property in terms of the CSR, the Contaminated Sites Regulation, in terms of soil quality. So if there are contaminants, they would have to remove it.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Youssef. Mayor Rumi, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation, and through the chair to staff. With the ALC, is the issue the soil or the motocross track?
Through the chair, both. So the Agricultural Land Commission, their legislation, their policies, their guidance to staff has changed as you know, all policies and legislation does over the years. So talking to the commission staff, there are two processes that could potentially be residents can get soil deposited on a property through two different processes, one through a notice of intent and one through an application. Notice of intent is not used for retroactive applications, which this is. So the Agricultural Land Commission will be interested in the soil type, but also the soil use. So they will look at the overall degradation of the soils or impacts or benefits of the application, and they will approve or deny based on those merits. However, the commission is there to protect the farmland of the reserve. to determine whether or not the Agricultural Land Commission would approve or deny a specific personal use like this. It's not commercial, it's not industrial, it's personal use. We don't know, and that's why there's a potential to go to the commission for their review and approval.
So the challenge right now is the soil. So is there a path forward? If, let's just say he were to remove all that soil, get the proper permits, get the proper soil, is this something that would then be able to move forward? Or we wouldn't move it either way because of the track?
Through the chair, if the tenant property owner were to remove the materials that are there now and then resubmit an application as a notice of intent to the Agricultural Land Commission, we would be able to get a response from that as to whether or not they would consider it. They may still push it through for a full-on development application like we're going through right now. We don't know whether the commission would approve or deny the use itself. The use does come with compaction of the track. I mean, it isn't in support of farming, and in the long term, it won't support farming.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Rumi. And just adding a few questions of my own. I understand that the owner or the tenant is really invested in the use of this current property, and I'm just going down the same track as Mayor Rumi. Is there a way to sort of make both folks happy here? The folks who are interested in that motocross track and also the ALR, is there a path that we could sort of recommend to them through staff's opinion?
The most ideal path would be for them to remove the material now and apply through a notice of intent. That way they would be able to get commission comments ahead of time to determine what may or may not be considered acceptable. However, if we want to see what the commission's review might be on something like this, they would still provide those comments, whether they want the other material removed and whether the motocross use is something they want to see. We could forward this on to the commission to determine whether or not they're even supportive of this kind of use, because they will dictate terms for the tenant and property owner on what they would like to see if they do support a motocross track. The reason staff has recommended a denial of the application is because it doesn't support farming and it can degrade farming in the future. So
that's useful. Thank you. I'm sure, as you know, not an agricultural soils expert at all. Sort of, I wonder, as an option, I'm wondering if staff would recommend we just forward it to them and then sort of let the ALC sort of decide as they will. Because I sort of wouldn't want to deny an applicant based on my lack of that understanding, but want an expert to then sort of look at and assess the merits of this application. Is that a path that staff would sort of recommend, or do you see issues with this option of sort of just forwarding it to the ALC and letting them deal with it, really?
if we forward an application that we aren't comfortable with in terms of its protection and encouragement of farming, it's hard to say how the commission may see our applications moving forward. Right now, they see us as protecting farmland and promoting farmland. So applications that come into the commission, they see that as, you know, the city is putting their an effort forward to protect and support their efforts. If we provide applications to the commission that don't support and may degrade farmland, it's hard to say whether commission staff will view that in one way or another.
I hear the potential reputation risk. Thank you. Thank you for that. And looking around, Councillor Youssef, just checking for anyone else for first round. Councillor Youssef, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the chair to staff, what was the previous use of the property prior to the motocross track being put in? What was being grown on the property, if anything?
Through the chair, I don't believe active farming was occurring on the property before the motocross track was put in.
So net farmland loss is at zero. Through the chair to staff, if we're saying we don't know whether the Agricultural Land Commission will oblige by the use or will retroactively accept the use of and this soil being deposited on the property or not, then why would we deny it going to the commission that ultimately has the jurisdiction to either deny or accept? Our role in this case is to simply move it forward to the commission. And now hearing that the property was not previously being actively farmed and wasn't producing anything that would be considered either human food or feed for animals. I think with those considerations, it be prudent upon us to actually allow the application to move to the Agricultural Land Commission for their consideration. And through the chair to staff, procedurally, would I be able to amend the motion on the floor to, rather than deny, to approve moving it to the Agricultural Land Commission at this point, or would that be something to be done next week at council?
Thank you, Councillor Youssef. Mr. Hartman, please.
Through the chair to Councillor Youssef, the purpose of committee of the whole is to ask questions of staff with respect to the application. The decision to move this to the ALC or to not move it to the ALC is the decision that you'll be making next Tuesday. So I think at that point, that would be the motion that you would entertain with council next Tuesday. Right now, it's whether or not you want to move this staff report to the council meeting of next Tuesday for final decision.
Thank you for that clarifications. Thank you. Yes, if possible, the previous question.
No, so through the chair, so the reason of, again, for the denial is because it doesn't support our general practice of protecting and supporting farmland, understanding that it wasn't actively farmed before. There is degradation impacts for the future. But having this forwarded to the commission will definitely give staff and council direction from the commission as well. So staff are strictly just providing a recommendation based on our policies in protecting farmland.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And Mayor Rumi, please.
Thank you very much. And just a quick follow-up. Understanding that this is questions and not comments, so I'll try to figure out how to say what I want to say. But first question is, how many types of applications do we get for ALCs? Ballpark. A lot?
Through the chair, I'll ask Thomas Liu to come up and assist with that question.
Mr. Goddard, please.
Because where I'm trying to go with this, and I want to confirm what you had said, though, is we do have a responsibility to ensure that what we send forward has the potential for success. Would the, and I believe you confirmed it by saying that, would the ALC frown upon us as a city if we're sending frivolous applications forward?
Maybe I'll just pause. Maybe I'll toss it over to Mr. Goddard and then go back to the podium, please.
Thank you. Council, this is well within your wheelhouse to make a decision on this matter. You have set your own policy guidelines in support of the Agricultural Land Commission, as you must, as a junior government to provincial agencies. But you are free to decide to move it forward or not based upon your judgment and your policies. You are also free to consider the matter and move it forward for that other body to do it. So, but it is your responsibility to weigh this matter and decide whether you need to say no here or let the commission do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goddard, and back to the podium, please.
Through the chair, I'll tackle the ALC permit requests. So we do get quite a few enforcement files. We do get smaller applications. They're divided into various, if they're building related, they're exempt, and we work with the applicants through those processes. We've had a couple larger projects. We had one on 128th, I think a year or two ago, that was approved. But we do have a few smaller ones. Oftentimes they go through notice of intent. So depending on the timing of whether they're bringing the application in ahead of time. So we do have a lot of smaller projects that we do approve that are deposited on agricultural land. but they typically go through a notice of intent. These two are different. They're retroactive. And that's why they're coming to council.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mayor Rumi. And looking around the floor and on the Zoom for any further questions, seeing none, calling a vote, please. And all those in favor of moving this item to the next council meeting, and that is unanimous. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Pem. Thank you, Mr. Du. Madam Clerk.
The next item on the agenda is item 5.3, application 2021-456-RZ for 26635 Dudney Trunk Road, RS3 to RS2. Staff are in attendance to present the application to council.
Morning, Mr. McMillan.
Morning, Madam Chair and Committee. This application is in an area that's designated suburban residential in the OCP. Currently has RS3 single detached rural residential and is proposed to be rezoned to RS2 single detached suburban residential. The approximate size of the site is 9.7 acres. And the purpose is to permit a future 3-lot subdivision and dedicated park conservation area. This is the parcel here on Dudney Trunk Road, very long, large parcel with a lot of creek, McFadden Creek and tributaries to McFadden Creek and the rear parcel area. This is the OCP map showing the suburban residential designation of the parcel and also conservation designation to the southwest and also to the north. And those areas to the north, they're the darker green there, conservation, and to the southwest are also have been dedicated to the city as park in the past through development applications. This is the subject site on the ortho photo, just showing the built environment and the natural environment as it is now. And as noted, the application is to rezone the subject property to RS2 to permit a 3-lot future subdivision and dedicated park conservation area. The 3 lots are approximately 1 acre each in size and accessed by Dudney Trunk Road. The dedicated park conservation area would be approximately 6.52 acres or approximately 2/3 of the entire site. The OCP designation suburban residential supports the rezoning to RS2. And if the application were to proceed through to final adoption, $21,300 in community amenity contributions would be payable. And this is the proposed preliminary subdivision plan showing the 3 lots accessing Dudney Trunk Road and the open space conservation area on the northern portion of the site. So the recommendation is to forward this application for consideration of first reading to the next council meeting and that the applicant provide the information required in the development procedures bylaw, Madam Chair and Committee.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. And looking for a motion, please, to move this to next council meeting, moved by Councillor Youssef and seconded by Councillor Dewitt. Thank you. And any questions from the floor from Zoom? Councillor Youssef, followed by Councillor Schiller. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. McMillan, for the presentation. Through the chair to staff, it wasn't clear from the maps as to what direction the slopes are on the property. Is it sloping southwards toward Dudney or more towards the waterways?
There's a bit of a slope towards Dudney and then there's a sloping down into the waterways as well. There aren't very steep slopes on the site, but there's a depression for the waterways.
And through the chair to staff, would there be concerns in your opinion, of course, with the environmental staff as well in the room, if I may take advantage would there be concerns of the septic systems, in this case, leaching into the waterways or contaminating them in any way, shape or form?
No, the application, if we're to proceed through the subdivision process, would need to prove out the septic fields and reserve septic fields, a primary one and reserve one, as per the provincial health regulations that are administered by Fraser Health. And those also require that there's the adequate drainage of the site, adequate soils, and a minimum of 30-meter setback from any water course.
And of course, in this case, knowing that property and the topography of it, staff does not have any concerns, if I may, through the chair?
No, and they would go through the technical analysis that would be reviewed by Fraser Health and be confirmed to us.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Youssef. Councillor Schiller, please.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to staff. So I just am working to develop my grasp of our OCP sort of out here on the eastern side of the town. And so I'm looking at the OCP map right now for this area, and it looks like it's basically land is either agricultural or the suburban residential designation. Is that correct?
That is correct. This area all on the north side of Dooney Trunk Road, all that surrounding area is suburban residential. And when you get a little bit further and down, you get into the agricultural land reserve. But this is not agriculture, and it's been this designation for quite some time and has been reviewed a couple times by council.
Yes, I appreciated that part of the report. Thank you. It's just good to know that, the questions do come up just because, development outside the urban boundary, sort of brings its own different aspects to it as we move forward here. So the designation, that RS2, is that the zoning that's available to all the properties in this area?
Yes, that zoning is in the official community plan for the suburban residential designation and had been utilized for the parcels to the west and the northwest about 10 years ago when they subdivided to RS2 and were rezoned to RS2.
And can you just remind me what the minimum lot size is for that?
The minimum lot size is 0.4 hectares or 1 acre, and these are slightly above that size.
Okay.
These lots are proposed.
Thank you. And I just want to confirm, it looks like the 3 lots will actually be sort of closer to Dooney than the water courses are, but I just couldn't quite tell for sure. Are any of those lots on the water courses, or are they kind of before them, for lack of a better term?
So all the proposed lots are facing Dooney Trunk Road and the water courses are to the north, and that's the majority of the site is being proposed to be dedicated its conservation park through the rezoning. So if there's any additional area that would be needed for protection, it would be in a covenant on the lots, but the furthest away from the water course, it can be on the lot.
Okay, so we're not anticipating a lot of impacts on the water courses from these lots as they're proposed.
No, I would not anticipate that. I think also just through the rezoning process, we're achieving conservation area and park area being dedicated. So then it would be in the ownership of the city as per the lots to the west. That could actually be a benefit.
Right. Okay, thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. And looking around the floor and around the Zoom for more questions. Seeing no further questions, calling for a vote, please, on whether we're moving this to the next council meeting. And that passes. Just waiting for one more. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
The next item on the agenda is item 5.4, application 2023-125-RZ 22527 Royal Crescent from RS1 to RM2, and staff again are in attendance to present the application to council.
Madam Chair and Committee, the site that's before you here is designated low rise apartment in the town center area plan. And the lot to the west, there's 3 lots. The lot to the west is zoned RS1 single detached residential at 22527 Royal Crescent. So that's a lot that's actually being considered for zoning. The other 2 lots on the eastern portion of the site are currently zoned RM2 medium density apartment residential. The proposed zoning of the westerly lot is to be rezoned to RM2 to be the same as the other 2 lots. The existing site area in total, all 3 lots, is approximately 0.6 acres. And the purpose is to construct a 6-story apartment building with 94 market strata dwelling units. This is a subject map showing the parcel on the cadastral map with Royal Crescent and 222nd Street to the west. And below is a BC Housing Seniors application that's being in process for some time, 6-story application. This is the map showing the apartment low-rise designation on the site. And this is the ortho photo showing the existing properties with the westernly single-family lot under rezoning. It's a single-family house. And on the actual site itself, to the other 2 parcels that are zoned for apartment, there's a 2-story 11-unit apartment there currently. So the application is, as noted, to rezone the subject property at this point from RS1 single detached residential to RM2 medium density apartment to match the existing RM2 zoning of the other 2 parcels to the east. and to permit the future construction of the 6-story apartment building with 94 strata units as noted. The OCP designation is low-rise apartment and supports a rezoning. Just as a little bit of background, even though we're at just first reading preliminary stage, there's a unit breakdown showing the 94 units, approximately 8.5%, 3-bedroom to 33% being studio units are being proposed. Knowing that this will have to go through a development permit application should the application proceed. The development proposal would be subject to community amenity contribution of $4,300 per unit for a total estimated $404,200 applicable at third reading, and the density at the proposed at this time at the proposed process is 2.14 FSR. That's a little bit below the minimum 1 point FSR. Zoning allows for a density bonus going up to 2.6 FSR, and based on that, going through that long paragraph, the density bonus to go from 1.8 to 2.14 would achieve approximately an $88,000 density bonus contribution. A little more background on the proposal. It meets the parking space requirements for vehicles, accessible parking spaces. There are more than required, about 50% more than required long-term bicycle parking. And there is less than the required short-term bicycle parking, which are quite high, actually. The short-term is quite high compared to some other municipalities. We're reviewing that. So the variance seems quite large, but it's actually quite high. The long-term parking is in line with what is required. The setbacks on the proposed development are 7.5 meters is required for all setbacks on all parcel lines. What's proposed is a 6-meter setback on the front parcel line and a 6-meter on the eastern parcel line, and 7.32 on the interior western parcel line, and no variance on the northern parcel line. It's also proposed amenity area reduction to 8.83 square meters per unit from the 1 square meter at this time. Again, we're early in the process. We don't have the full development permit plans, but there's a small variance, the amenity area proposed, but a larger proposed variance to the bicycle parking as noted for visitors from 29 to 3 spaces. And this is the proposed site plan just showing the building fronting Royal Crescent with the landscaping areas around and the driveway access from the lane to the rear to the north. And the proposed building, 6 stories with the top story, the 6-story stepped in as on the front parcel line on Royal Crescent. And a perspective of the building from Royal Crescent. So the recommendation is to forward the bylaw to council for consideration of first reading, and the applicant provide the further information required in the development procedures bylaw. Madam Chair and Committee.
Thank you, Mr. McMullen. Looking for a motion, please to move this to the next council meeting, moved by Councillor Youssef and seconded by Mayor Rumi. Thank you. And any questions around the floor or on Zoom? Mayor Rumi, followed by Councillor Youssef.
Thank you for the presentation, and through the chair to staff. I do have a couple of questions which wasn't clear. Number one, currently what's there? There's a house, but is there apartments already on that property?
Yes, and that's the interesting thing. The house is what's being rezoned at this time. But on the eastern 2 lots, there's an existing 2-story apartment with 11 units in it that already has zoning. It's not subject to zoning. If the zoning were to proceed, the whole site would go through to a development permit conclusion.
And of the existing zoning, the housing on the zoning, are those rentals or are those stratas?
Those are rental units.
Those are rentals. So
Yes.
we would be losing rental space.
Yes, you would, in that regard, be losing 11 rental spaces. Yes.
Right. And do we have an idea of how many rentals are on there? How many apartments?
11, I believe there's 11 apartments in that building.
Thank you for that. The next question I have is, what is the reason for, if we're requiring 29 visitor spots for bikes and they're only wanting to put in 3, what is the reason for that?
Madam Chair, through to the mayor, I could let the applicant speak to a little bit more. It's quite a reduction, but I'd also note that 29 visitor spaces is quite a bit for bicycle parking. We're looking at the parking bylaw. 3 is quite a small number. If the applicant, I'm not sure if the applicant is here. They may be online because we had a change in the meeting.
I guess the real question is why are we recommending 29 in that sense? How did we get to that number?
Those requirements were put into the parking bylaw approximately 10 years ago for the town center. We don't have parking requirements for bicycles outside the town center. But as we proceed forward with the parking bylaw, which is coming forward for council for review, we'll be looking at that. And this specific application, we can be looking at what would be typically required for visitor parking for this type of building.
Thank you. And my final question is, would we know, I see that you have the mix all broken out, which is nice to see. Do we know anything, whether they're intending to put car chargers and bike storage?
At this point in time, Madam Chair, through to Mayor Rumi, don't have information on bike storage in the plans, but they are required to provide the rough-in wiring for the vehicle parking as required in the parking bylaw as it stands now.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you, Mayor Rumi, and followed by Councillor Youssef, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually had a question through you to more so to the applicant concerning the strata fees of the 3-bedroom unit versus the 2-bedroom unit. When the unit is complete, I don't know if staff would be able to weigh in on that.
Madam Chair, through Councillor Youssef, we wouldn't know the strata fees at this point, but strata fees are based generally on the size of units, amongst other things, in the total budget of the building. We could ask if Emily Cairns, who's the applicant, is available to answer any more about that. She's online.
Ms. Kearns, if you'd like to speak, please turn on your video.
Hi there. Yeah.
Ms. Kearns, if you could please turn on your video, that'd be much appreciated.
Hi there.
Please go ahead.
I'm here on behalf of today.
Ms. Kearns, it's a little bit choppy. I don't know if there's anything we can do to fix the audio.
I'll try. Okay.
Let's give it a go.
Okay. So notice that's not to return at to be centralized. I can give you a list.
I'm sorry, Ms. Kearns, we're not quite able to make out what you're speaking. I want to make sure that we get your answers through. I'm not sure if there's anything else we can suggest to Ms. Kearns.
I can try in the chat bar.
That's good. Maybe if you keep
Sure.
leaning forward towards the microphone, you might get it.
Okay.
If you can lean forward and project, let's try that.
Okay, so I'm Emily Kearns, architect DIBC, talking on behalf of the applicant today. As the head of planning noted, strata fees are yet to be determined, and that is all the information that I can give you at this point in time, other than they would be based on the size of the unit. And if the applicant is actually here today, he may be able to speak further on the tenure of the building, but as the architect, I am not aware of strata fees at this point in time.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. And through you, Madam Chair, I was hoping that while we have the applicant online is through you to inquire as to whether staff have had a discussion or proposed the building being in a mixed use form to provide some of the employment opportunities and commercial space that's currently at a premium in our downtown area. And seeing the location of this building, I think it would fit in. So I'm not sure if staff have had those discussions or if the applicant has had those considerations.
Madam Chair, to Councillor Youssef, as the site is designated for a low-rise apartment, it doesn't have a commercial component, so there weren't discussions about putting commercial in that building.
Thank you for that. And through you, Madam Chair, to the applicant, has there been consideration to have the building rezoned ultimately, since you're in the rezoning process, to go to a mixed use form and be able to utilize that commercial space? And as I said, in our community, it is highly sought after and is at a premium.
No, I don't believe that there was the intention of going through a mixed use development, but rather residential for much needed housing in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Youssef. And looking around the floor and on the Zoom for any more questions, I will add my own questions. Thank you for the breakdown of the size of the units. I'm noticing that 63% of the units are one bedroom in some form, where the studio, one bedroom or one bedroom plus den. Given previous council discussions about the need for more family size units, have there been any discussions with the applicant about interest in increasing the number of 2 or 3 bedroom units?
Madam Chair, just looking at the notes on the application, staff had suggested 10% for 3-bedroom units, and I see that they have 8.5%. So it's a little less than our suggestion, but close to that.
Always interested in more. Thank you for that. And for question about the long-term bike parking as well, just following up on Mayor Rumi's question. Has there been any interest? I apologize if I missed that there. Any interest from the applicant of increasing the number of long-term bike parking spaces? I appreciate that the variance is that it is more than currently required.
Right. So I'm not aware of any discussions about increasing the long-term bike parking, which meets the bylaw, but which is lower. The only discussion was them proposing a large reduction in the visitor offsite parking or visitor outside parking for bikes.
Great. Thank you. The last piece that I'm curious about is just picking on what Mayor Rumi commented on, which is the number of existing rental suites in the lots. And just thinking about potential ways to sort of mitigate the impact to tenants. Do we have anything existing in our bylaws that require any sort of tenant relocation policy?
Yeah, we do have a tenant relocation policy. Now, the interesting thing is that policy adopted by council about 5 years ago applies to rezoning applications only. And the apartment building is zoned already. It's not subject to the rezoning application itself, just the house to the west. So specifically, it doesn't apply as per policy. We've discussed this with staff and the director. So that is a bit of an unusual situation that the apartment is not subject to rezoning, and that policy doesn't apply except to rezoning, and the only lot being rezoned is a single family house. We could talk with the applicant more about their relocation plans. I think this application is just at first reading now.
I would look forward to that. Thank you. With that could come forward when we discuss this at a council meeting. And also, I'd be interested to hear whether there's anything that we can do on top of the council or the governance side requiring this application to provide that relocation assistance, whether now or in the future, or we can discuss this at the council meeting. Information of sort of what levers we can pull.
Right. I understand that. We will talk more with the applicant between now and next council. We can talk about this more at council, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'm very interested in that. Thank you, Mr. McMullen. Looking for any more questions around the table or on the Zoom. Seeing no further questions, calling for a vote, please, on whether to move this item to the next council meeting, and that is unanimous. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Excuse me, the next item on the agenda, item 5.5, application 2023-163-RZ 2235 and 2247 and 2265 Patterson Avenue, RS1 to RM1, and staff are in attendance to present the application to council.
Please.
So, Madam Chair, this site is designated low density multifamily under the Hammond area plan. And the existing zoning is RS1 single detached residential and is proposed to be rezoned to RM1 low density townhouse residential. The site is approximately 1.38 acres and 28 townhouse units are proposed. Subject properties on the cadastral map, the north side of Patterson are shown there. And to the southeast is an apartment building application that's sitting at third reading right now and would be considered probably in the short term for adoption and for a development permit issuance. So the subject properties here in the existing state that are single family houses, and then a large field to the north, which has the Burger King and gas station at the corner, and also is designated for commercial along the Lougheed Highway to the north. And jumping ahead, looks similar, but that's a different red to the north. That's the commercial designation of the Lougheed Highway to the north. And then the blue boundary is a Hammond area plan boundary. And in Hammond, it has a different designation, which is the low density multifamily, although the colors look almost the same in the map here. So it's a low density multifamily on the site and medium density multifamily just to the east, where the apartment building application is sitting right now at third reading. And so as noted, the application is to rezone the subject property RM1 low density townhouse residential to permit the construction of 28 three-story townhouse units. There are 3 variations on the 3-unit bedroom design and featuring rooftop patios and having quite large rear yards compared to many townhouse projects we see. The units range in size from 1,400 to 1,550 square feet, plus a double car garage for each unit. The site plan includes the centrally located amenity area, and off-street parking meets all the bylaw requirements. There's some proposed lot setback variances, which I'll note in the next slide. And the application to proceed to adoption would be providing 159,600 in community amenity contributions. This is the layout here showing Patterson to the south. And I think it's a 3.5 meter setback to the units to Patterson and to the rear parcel line to the north. That's the parcel that fronts Lougheed Highway. The setback relaxations are just on the sides, to the east and west. Those are the front units. The units in behind for the majority of the side parcel lines are well over the 7.5 meter setback. So very large rear yards in this proposal. Those units. Oops, went too far at one. Well, the recommendation is to bring it forward to council for consideration of first reading. Now that I've gone back to the first slide by accident.
Whatever works. Thank you, Mr. McMillan. I'm looking for a motion, please, to move this to the next council meeting, moved by Councillor Schiller and seconded by Councillor Youssef, please. And looking for any questions around the floor or on the Zoom, Councillor Youssef.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to staff for the presentation. Through you to staff, when we're looking at Patterson Avenue and putting in 28 townhouses that are 3 stories, seeing the layout of the site is helpful, and realizing that even though we are at first reading, it is going to be 3 stories high. What are our plans for managing the added traffic in and out of Patterson vis-a-vis currently 203rd is the only point of access, I believe? And through you, Madam Chair, to staff, are there plans to extend Patterson so as to have it be a connection all the way through to allow traffic to be able to access now this much density, and considering the 6-story that's going in at the corner as well, to be able to move families and residents in and out?
Right. Well, we're just at first reading, but I would refer the future plans and potential requirements of engineering to Forrest.
Thank you, and through the chair. And so that's something that we'd look at as application proceeds forward. At this point in time, there's no plans to extend Patterson further west to make any additional connections. I would just note, as part of the other recent rezoning on Patterson Avenue, we did do a traffic impact assessment with the applicant, so we can build upon some of that work. That is one of the challenges when we're putting increased density along one of our major transportation corridors, It comes with lots of opportunity for that and for that increased density and walkability, but there are challenges with that transportation, the traffic engineering side of things. And so there are trade-offs when we start looking at this density in these proximities. But as the application moves forward, engineering staff will be involved in our transportation group as well to try to mitigate impacts where possible. Thank you.
Thank you to staff for that clarification. It's actually, I understand that we're at first reading. It's that we're putting in 28 more units on a street that ultimately is a dead end is my concern with this application, even though it is at first reading. And I just wanted to inquire if we have plans and realizing. So sorry, Madam Chair, this raises another question. When we had, through you to staff, when we had the traffic study for the 6-story application at the corner, was this level of density also considered, or will there be another study now required because of the addition of these units going into the same neighborhood and street?
So thank you. And so as this application moves forward, should council wish to support it, we'll dive into that. The traffic impact assessment was completed as part of the adjacent development, and then determine through this additional 28 units if any additional scope needs to be looked at. Typically, when we're looking at, say, 28 units, we're looking at peak trips in and about the 10 to 12 mark. And so when you're looking at that in the scale versus the background traffic, it's likely doesn't reach a point where any additional investment in transportation network is required, but we're always looking at that. And so as part of this, should council support the application as it moves forward, we'll be happy to look into those traffic engineering side of things as well.
Thank you to staff. Thank you, Madam Chair. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Youssef. Looking for any more questions on the Zoom or around the table? Seeing none, calling for a vote, please. All those in favor of moving this item to the next council meeting? Thank you. That passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
The next item on the agenda is item 5.6, application 2023-198-RZ for 11822 Glenhurst Street, RS3 to RT1. Staff are in attendance to present the application to council.
Madam Chair and committee, the application is an area that's designated urban residential. The existing zoning is RS3 single detached rural residential and is proposed to be rezoned to RT1 2-unit urban residential or duplex. The site is approximately 0.27 acres prior to road dedication being provided, and as noted, it's for construction of a duplex. This is subject property on Glenhurst Street. This is it in the ortho photo showing the built context of the area. And as noted, the application is to rezone subject property from RT1 2-unit urban residential permit, construction of a duplex. There's an existing 1-story single family dwelling that would be removed on site if the application were to proceed to completion. The urban residential designation supports RT1 for duplexes or 2-unit residential. And if the application were to proceed to completion, there'd be a $5,700 community amenity contribution applicable for the additional unit. And this is the site plan preliminary at first reading here, showing basically the units A and B in a side-by-side duplex with a line going down the center, which is nominally the separation of the private amenity space on each side of the parcel. It's not, it looks like a subdivision line. It's not. We've had that note put on there. So it's a single duplex, which would be stratified. Madam Chair, this the recommendation is to forward the proposed amending bylaw to first reading, and then the applicant proceed to provide the necessary information on the development procedures bylaw. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Looking for a motion, please, to move this to the next council meeting. Moved by Councillor Youssef and seconded by Councillor Duerk. Any questions from the Zoom or around the floor, please, on this item? Seeing no questions, calling a vote, please. All those in favor of moving this item to the next council meeting, and that passes unanimously. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
The next item on the agenda is item 5.7, application 2017-432-RZ, 2234 Lorne Avenue, RS1 to RT2, and staff again are in attendance to present the application.
Hello, Ms. Shahrizadi.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. And this presentation, can we go back? Thank you. This presentation is for the rezoning application 2017-432-RZ for the property on 20234 Lorne Avenue, requesting council to grant second reading for the zoning amendment bylaw 7518-2018. The purpose of this rezoning application is to rezone the property from RS1 single detached residential to RT2 ground-oriented residential infill to allow the construction of a courtyard residential comprised of a single detached residential and a 2-unit residential. The property is located in Hammond, the southwest corner of Lorne Avenue and Princess Street. The property is relatively flat and contains a number of significant trees, mostly along the property line. The vehicular access to the site currently is through Lorne Avenue and will continue to be off Lorne Avenue. The property is also located within the Fraser River floodplain, and any construction on the site would be subject to the flood construction elevation. Under the current official community plan and Hammond area plan, the property is designated low density multifamily, which allows and support the rezoning to RT2 to allow the construction of a courtyard residential. The purpose of the low density multifamily designation is basically to encourage additional density as well as extended form of development in a form that is sensitive to the existing neighborhood context, as well as the historic building element and the garden spaces in the neighborhood. Considering the land use designation of the property, any development on this site would be subject to Hammond development permit, as well as ground-oriented infill residential development permit design guideline of the OCP. The properties surrounding the subject site generally include the same form of development. There are generally single detached residential and have the same OCP designation of low density multifamily, which basically allows a similar development potential subject to meeting all the requirement of the zoning bylaw and other city bylaws and policy and the neighborhood context. Just to provide a little bit of background about this application, in 2017, the applicant submitted the rezoning application to rezone this property to RM1 to construct 5 townhouse dwelling. Council granted first reading in February 2018. However, due to further detailed review of staff, it was realized that the proposed townhouse development is not in compliance with the adjacent neighborhoods regarding the form and character. Since then, the applicant revised the rezoning application and requested to rezone the property to RT2 to construct a 4-plex. Council granted first reading to that revised rezoning application back in December 2018. And after first reading, staff started detailed review of the proposal, and a number of concerns came up. And one was basically the proposed development were not in line with the off-street parking and loading bylaw regarding tandem parking ratio, as well as the proposed development were kind of not regarding the building bulk and form were not in compliance with adjacent neighborhood, and the requirement to dedicate road along Lorne Avenue created some siting restriction to provide 4 dwelling unit in a form of a 4-plex. As such, the applicant revised their proposal and is proposing to construct a courtyard residential in a form of a basically 3 dwelling unit. This is the proposed site plan, and the proposed development is basically comprised of a single detached residential to the left and a 2-unit residential to the right, with around 147 square meters of landscape courtyard area to the southwest of the site. Each dwelling unit contains 3 bedrooms and over 45 square meters of outdoor private areas, and as well as 2 off-street parking, one of which is kind of include roughed-in infrastructure capable of providing to level 2 charging station. And there's also 1 surface visitor parking to the northwest of the site. And this is the rendering of the proposal, and which indicate a single detached residential to the right and a 2-unit residential to the left. Unfortunately, this rendering does not indicate, does not show the landscape courtyard to the back. And the building will have a form of a 2-story building, which is in line and in compliance with adjacent neighborhood. And considering that this project is subject to development permit, the architectural and landscape design has been reviewed by the advisory design panel back in April 2023. And the design panel provided their comments, and the drawings basically revised to meet those requirements and comments. And they went back to advisory design panel in June 2023 and has been approved. So the complete list of recommendation has been provided in the report, and in general, we're requesting that council grant second reading to this zoning amendment bylaw and forward that to the public hearing, subject to the terms and conditions that listed in the report that needs to be met prior to final reading, including registration of the servicing agreement, as well as the restrictive covenant for the geotechnical report, and as well as a stormwater management plan, and dedication of 2 meters along Lorne Avenue, and voluntary contribution of the community amenity. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. And looking for a motion, please, to move this to the next council meeting, moved by Mayor Rumi and seconded by Councillor Carreras. And looking for any questions on the Zoom or around the floor. Seeing no questions, calling for a vote, please, to move this item to the next council meeting. And it passes, we're looking for one more, and passes unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item 5.8, 2021-341-RZ for 22-108, 22-118, 22-126, 22-136, 22-146, 22-154, and 22-164 Lougheed Highway from RS1 to RM2, and staff are in attendance to present the application to council.
Hello, Mr. Goddard.
Good afternoon, council. The applicant is in the meeting. If you have any questions, their architect, Andrea Scott, and their team is here if you have any specifics. We are a low-rise apartment designation. This is just inside the town center, almost on the boundary of the Lougheed corridor plan, where these buildings will become common in the future, we believe. The zoning is RS1, single-family homes. Those homes will be removed, of course. I think they're already in that process. We have proposed zoning of RM2, medium density. This will permit a 6-story apartment building. The zone is 1.4 acres in size. It's a good sized building. It's 224 units being proposed in a 6-story form, wood frame with 2 stories of underground parking. There's the site. You have the Salvation Army Center is just to the east of the site, right on Lougheed Highway. This shows the designation of apartments right there. It's likely we have applications to the west for similar sorts of buildings. We've also approved last week or so, building to the west of the Baptist Church. So this is the form we're going to be seeing evolving over time along Lougheed Highway in accordance with the town center and the Lougheed corridor plan. There are the sites today as they exist. I believe a few homes have been removed since that photo was taken. We have a development again for 224 units being proposed with 2 ground stories of underground parking. The layout of the building mix is shown there. There's essentially 37 2-bedroom and 2-bedroom plus den, or 16 of those total. 1-bedrooms are the majority at 156. The density proposed under the RM1 zone is typically 1.8, although everybody exceeds that by using the density bonus provisions under the zoning bylaw. This would render a maximum density here of 2.3 more or less, which is about a $450,000 contribution to get that additional density. There's also an community amenity charge applicable to each unit of $4,300 each, which is almost $1 million in CAC fees would be charged at the final zoning stage if it proceeds that far. This shows the parking ratio. They are looking for a parking variance here of 64 stalls in total, but instead of just asking for that release, they're looking for contributing $1.28 million for those stalls that are missing. Again, we are on a major transportation corridor. We potentially have the B line and the R3 bus line running along here. They're within walking distance of the downtown amenities, so it is well suited for probably considering a relaxation, but that will be ultimately your decision. Staff does support that proposal. There is also biking provisions in accordance with the bylaw being provided, and they do meet our biking provisions for long-term storage as well as regular storage. Again, we have a slight OCP amendment change here. The low-rise designation is RM2. We're going to go from 4 to 6 stories here, but that is supportable under much of the practices we've been doing of late. We have a variance proposal as well. We'll get into more details in that, and the development permit will be carried forward in the future with future reports. But there will be likely a variance on Lougheed Highway for the building. There was a significant take being required by the Ministry of Highways for dedication along this corridor for future transportation planning. And it has impacted the site given they're just single family lots. So the building will need a variance to Lougheed Highway. About 4.5 meters will be the resulting setback, which is adequate given this form of development. And those, of course, that variance and any others we may discover in that process will be presented to you in the future. This is the rendering of the elevations facing north on Lougheed Highway. There will be additional work done to these as we get to the development permit stage. Of course, this is only second reading. There is the layout site plan for the site. You can see the building is kind of dumbbell shaped with the wider ends at the ends, and the internal middle sets it back from Lougheed and gives some open space at the front of each unit. It faces a lane at the back where the access to the building will be. There's the overall massing and scale of the building. It's very similar to the building proposed to the north, just west of the Baptist Church. And this is the likely form we'll see in a 6-story form on Lougheed. Of course, there could be higher buildings as well in the Lougheed plan. So we're recommending the application proceed forward, second and to public hearing under these following terms and conditions. We'll of course need our traditional servicing agreement, approval of the Ministry of Transportation for that dedication for the zoning bylaw. Road dedication will be required. They'll consolidate the lot. So the geotechnical report will deal with the stability of the site, which we indicate now. That's fine so far. This, of course, is subject to the Fraser Escarpment review, so that will be have to be considered in the final analysis. We have the covenants for parking, stormwater, and removal of any existing buildings. The site is clean in accordance with their stage 1 site investigation. We have a number of payments that will be required to be contributed to the city as a result of this moving forward. The 1.28 million for the parking, the voluntary contribution for the CACs, as well as the density bonus will be required. I think that's it. If you have any questions, the applicant is here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goddard. Looking for a motion to move this to the next council meeting, moved by Councillor Dirick, seconded by Mayor Rumi. Thank you. Looking for any questions on the Zoom or around the floor? Councillor Schiller.
Thank you, Chair. And through you to staff, do we have any information available on whether, just wondering about the mix of rental units as opposed to private ownership for this building?
Thank you. I believe the building is only a market condo. There are no rentals being proposed.
Okay. Is there anything we can do as a city to encourage rentals in a portion of the building?
That is probably a bigger discussion that we should have at some point in the future about our housing policy. Right now, we can speak to the applicant about that, but I don't think that's their intent. But certainly in the future, council could start laying down some more parameters around that, but that's a bigger discussion that we should probably talk about, not on the back of an application, but a larger discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goddard. My other question is for staff as well. It's around cycling infrastructure, and this is a significant building going in, and we know there's a lot of development happening along the corridor. Can staff just sort of remind me what our plans are for cycling infrastructure along Lougheed connecting to the downtown core specifically?
Sure. I will ask our city engineer Forrest to respond to that.
Thank you. And so, so for the connection into the downtown core, the predominant route that identified in STP is the multi-use path on the north side of the Lougheed Highway at this point, until you get into 222nd, so immediately adjacent to this development. And then there's a couple of routes through downtown, the closest being Selkirk Avenue, identified as a cycling facility, and then on the north side of Dudney Brown Avenue. So two parallel routes to support our access through our downtown core.
Thank you very much. And there's an inclusion here of a proposal to pay cash in lieu of parking spaces. And I can appreciate this is an area that's well served by transit, and that probably makes sense. And it just makes me wonder if that is, an opportunity for us to use some of that contribution towards increasing our cycling infrastructure in this area. But I appreciate that's a larger question, so I'll leave that there for now. But I would be interested to learn more about how these developments, as they move forward, how we can continue to build out that infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. So Mayor Rumi, please, followed by Councillor Carreras.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you, Madam Chair. And through the chair to staff, more when I look at the Lougheed, obviously this is an area where we do want to densify, which is good. I am curious, so with the traffic that's there, people coming and going, we see this a lot on Dudney Trunk. When people are coming home, they're doing left turns and it slows down traffic. Have we considered what that would look like here? Because as we continue to expand this, what's that going to do with the congestion piece of it? Are they going to be able to turn left, or are they only going to be able to turn left on light streets, for instance?
Thank you. And so through the chair, and so staff have looked at the transportation solutions in this area, knowing we have a number of applications coming forward. And so we're working with the Ministry of Transportation right now to determine what those solutions could be to support these applications. And we'll continue to work on them as they move forward. It's likely that we'll need an additional traffic signal on Lougheed Highway west of 222nd. And we're just working through some of what those details of those would look like. But we would be prepared to speak to those at future discussions upon these applications. But we're certainly looking to see how we can support this, as well as the 3 or 4 other applications that are moving forward in parallel.
Thank you very much. I think that's going to be very important to make sure that we're not actually slowing down traffic on the Lougheed. Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Thanks, Mayor Rumi. Councillor Carreras, please.
Thank you. Just sort of on Councillor Schiller's questions around the 3-bedroom, or not the 3-bedroom piece, on the rental piece, because this is a large development and it's a real missed opportunity. But I also appreciate on the backs of a development, and we have so much coming forward. Do we have any idea when the next sort of housing action or housing implementation report is coming to us? Because that will be our next stepping stone to create policy off of.
Through the chair, I believe that work will be coming in the fall to you. I'm not exactly sure of the date, but I can certainly provide an email to council on those details.
Okay, because that'll be important for us to create that policy moving forward, right? And then just a question, has there been any discussion around 3 bedrooms? We are seeing many other communities around us with a 10% minimum for 3 bedrooms in large developments, and more and more families are living in 3-bedroom condos. I'm just curious if there's been any discussion, because we seem to be having a lot of 3 bedrooms, but this one is a big development with 0 3-bedrooms.
I will let Mrs. Scott talk to you maybe about their discussions. There are a lot of 2 bedrooms, and there are 2 bedrooms plus den. I don't recall the exact size of them at the moment, but maybe she could fill in those blanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
At the time when we applied for the development permit, which was in June of 2021, there was no need for the 3-bedroom option, which is why we had proposed the 2-bedroom and den option, which is what you see today. So currently we have 16 2-bedrooms and den and 37 2-bedrooms. They are of quite a large size, as they are all the corner unit. And they range in size from over 900 square feet, approximately 950 square feet for these 2-bedrooms and den units.
Okay. And then the visitor parking is significantly reduced, and I'm just wondering why there's such a reduction in visitor parking. Sorry, I can't.
We're just,
I can't see anything, so I don't know if someone's making their way to the mic to answer that or not. You can't see whoever's going to the mic.
I think that's coming, Councillor Carrera. So just
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. Sorry, these numbers are a little small for us old people. I think you're right. The report indicated from staff that it was about 25 or so stalls short for the visitors.
33.
33, okay.
Yeah.
I think that's because they probably devoted more of those units that were available to the actual units themselves. So the visitors are short. That could potentially readjust those numbers relative to the unit types in the final design. But I think the overall, they've maximized with a 2-story underground parking. They pretty much maximize the space they have on site for parking. So they could monkey around with those ratios on who gets what. But I still think the ratio of about 64 stalls needs to be purchased. So if council was concerned about needing more visitors, they could look at that, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I just 12 visitor parking stalls for a 200 plus residential unit is pretty tight. I'm not sure what options are around that area, especially when we don't have, I've talked a lot about the parking downtown. So, so just looking for that. And then just because this is part of the Lougheed corridor, correct, Mr. Godard?
No, it's actually, it's an odd one. It's on the boundaries between that. If you go to the west of the property, you would be in the Lougheed, but you're just still inside the town center plan here.
Oh, okay. Okay. So this is a weird space. I'm just curious about, you know, of course, the Lougheed corridor still has to come to us. And then there's a downtown core. There's no commercial in this building at all. And I'm just wondering if this is this weird anomaly space where it's not quite town center, not quite. Is there a need for commercial in this space?
There is not a requirement here. It is strictly a residential area. And, you know, given the traffic complications and the movement that were required here, would probably not good to introduce a commercial situation here. And I don't think the Ministry of Highways would be that supportive of it as well. But certainly much of the Lougheed corridor will contain a commercial component. But this is probably not the best spot to do it.
Okay, so that would be kind of like sort of focused around 203 and 216, I think, when I look at the Lougheed corridor.
Thank you, Councillor Carrera.
Intensive.
If we could ask you to just save that for round 2, and then I can circle right back to you.
Thank you.
And I'm looking around the floor for more questions before we go to that round 2. I'll throw in some of my own, just riffing off of Councillor Schiller and Councillor Carreras's questions. I'm noticing that in terms of the percentage of 2 and 3 bedroom units, we've got less than 30% here. I believe the number I had is 76%, 1 bedroom of some form. Has there been any interest from the applicant to increase that percentage of 2 and 3 bedroom units?
I think we can talk to the applicant about that and we can bring that information back. You will see this again at the development permit stage as well. So the applicants are here, owners as well. They heard the message, I think, so they could probably look at adjusting things a bit.
Wonderful, thank you. And then just to follow up on that, in the housing action plan that might be coming to us in the fall. Do we have a section in there about family-friendly housing? I just noticing we're asking the same questions. I'm putting myself on tape recorder
Correct.
all the time.
Staff have noted that as well. I think the next report we're coming back to you is with more of the tenant relocation sort of issue. But that housing issue with the new council needs to be discussed in context of where we have been. And Amanda is working on a report for you shortly. So then you'll have an opportunity to give your clear direction on where you're wanting to go on that topic shortly, I think.
Great, thank you. Looking forward to both those pieces, the tenant
Correct.
relocation and the family-friendly housing policy.
Thanks.
Good, thank you. And those are my questions, and opening it back up for round 2. And last call for round 2, okay. And then, so calling for a vote, please, on moving this item to the next council meeting. And that passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goddard. Madam Clerk.
Next item is item 5.9, 2020-421 DP DVP for 12026 Dunbar Street and 22137 Dudney Trunk Road. It's a development variance permit and development permit, and staff are in attendance to present the application to council.
Good morning.
Whoops, I've got a page going forwards here. Hi, the application before you is 2020-421 DP and DVP located at 12026 Dunbar Street and 22137 Dudney Trunk Road. The existing OCP for this site is Town Center Commercial. By the time this slide was made, council has rezoned this property to C3 Town Center Commercial. The site is approximately 0.26 hectares or approximately 0.659 acres. The proposal is to permit the construction of a 6-story mixed-use commercial residential building with 97 apartment buildings and 3 townhouse units. This is the subject map showing the 2 properties on the corner of Dudney Trunk Road and Dunbar Street. The neighborhood context map showing that it is an area within transition. The development proposal, the proposed development variance permit and development permit applications are to permit the future construction of a 6-story mixed-use commercial residential buildings. These 2 applications were being considered with a rezoning, but the rezoning has been completed to C3. The proposed development comprises approximately 100 residential units with 2 levels of underground parking. 97 apartment units are proposed, as well as 3 townhouse units. The apartment units will be a mixture of studio, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. The proposed development will include 2 indoor amenity spaces and 1 outdoor amenity space. The commercial units are proposed on the ground floor of the building facing Dudney Trunk Road and a portion of Dunbar Street elevation. The proposed development meets the requirements of the off-street parking and loading bylaw. And before you on the table shows you the breakdown of the vehicle parking as well as the bicycle parking requirements. The proposed variants are small in nature and are to really meet the design of the building. So the proposed building variances to section 703 of the C3 Town Center Commercial Zone of zoning, Maple Ridge zoning bylaw 7600-2019 to vary section 703 11.1A from requiring a residential use to be the only use in the story to allow both residential and commercial uses in a story to permit 3 townhouse units. And also to support that variance, we need a variance to vary section 703.111C from requiring a residential use to be above all stories with non-residential use to allow both residential and commercial uses in a story to permit 3 townhouse units. To make this really a simple thing is along Dunbar Street, the proposal has to provide a street frontage to the existing residential component in the neighborhood. There are 3 townhouse units, and the zoning bylaw, as it currently stands, restricts that, would require that to have all commercial on those frontages. And the design of the building is to provide that interface between the residential. And so we're asking to vary that to permit these 3 townhouse units to face Dunbar Street. And in addition, to vary section 703.71B to reduce the 6-meter setback from a rear lot line to 0 meters for the indoor amenity area only. The bylaw would require it to be stepped back, and there's quite a big outdoor amenity space on the 2nd floor, so it fits within the design. It's not changing the really design of the building, except from a zoning perspective, we need to just move it out. If it was just the building with the residential component, it could be there. So it's really fine tuning the design of the building through variances. And this really doesn't really give you a good perspective because it's quite hard sometimes to present the idea to you. But along Dunbar Street is where the townhouses will be. And where it's up in the corner, that is where we're stepping it towards the rear property line to allow the outdoor amenity space. And this gives you some of the elevations of the building that's contained in your package, and providing you some of the landscaping concepts showing up on the right-hand corner, the outdoor amenity space that is going to, as proposed, to a 0 lot line. And the recommendations contained in your report, there's 2 of them, that the corporate office would be authorized to sign and seal 202-421 DVP, respecting the properties located at 12026 Dunbar Street and 22137 Dewdney Trunk Road, and that the corporate officer be authorized to sign and seal 2020-421 DP, respecting properties located at 12026 Dunbar Street and 22137 Dewdney Trunk Road. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Looking for a motion moved by Councillor Youssef and seconded by Mayor Rumi. And looking for opening it up to questions from around the floor or in Zoom. Seeing no questions, calling a vote on this item, please, on whether to move this to the next council meeting, and that passes unanimously. Thank you, Council. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item 6.1 for 14500 Silver Valley Road, request for sanitary sewer service connection. There's no presentation for this item.
A motion then please to move this item to the next council meeting, and that was moved by Councillor Dewick and then seconded by Mayor Rumi. And opening floor to any questions, I see Councillor Youssef followed by Councillor Dewick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to staff, just the work that's required, road tearing up, storm water being connected, as well as the sanitary sewer. Who will incur the expenses for the works?
Through the chair to Councillor Youssef, the developer UBC will be responsible for any work. We're not anticipating a lot of impact to the existing road, but they'll be responsible for any works in support of this development in the future.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Madam Chair. That is my question.
Thank you, Councillor Youssef, and seeing no further questions on this item. Vote please to move this item to the next council meeting, and that passes unanimously. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Next item is 6.2, 21903 128 Avenue, request for sanitary sewer service connection.
And a motion please to move this item to the next council meeting, moved by Councillor Dewick, seconded by Councillor Youssef, and opening the floor to questions or on this from the Zoom. Seeing no questions on this item, calling for a vote please to move this item to the next council meeting, and that passes unanimously. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Item 6.3, award of contract for EN 23-427 Hammond Road multi-use path.
And looking for a motion, please, to move this item to the next council meeting. That's moved by Councillor Schiller and seconded by Councillor Youssef. And any questions, please, on this item? Seeing no questions, calling for a vote, please, to move this item to the next council meeting. And that passes unanimously. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Item 7.1 is the Fire Services Master Plan Final Report, and staff are in attendance to present this item to council.
Thank you. Good morning, Chief.
How's that for timing? Right in at the. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of council. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Before you, you have the report that covers the draft final fire services or fire service master plan. We have Mr. Polsom in the audience here as well, who can answer some pointed questions and that you might have. Where we're at with the process here is we've done the work. You've seen at workshop the presentation from, Mr. Polsom. I think, we're happy with where we've landed with the plan from a staff perspective. We've provided the report to you for consideration. We have the covering report. What I really want to be clear on when we're talking about approving the master plan report is that what we're not suggesting is that we take every one of these recommendations and go charging ahead, full speed ahead with this. This is going to be an incremented rollout piece. We understand that there's a lot of incremental financial elements that go along with a report of this magnitude. And what staff are working on right now, myself in particular, as well as my other senior staff in coordination with our finance department, is trying to get a line of sight on exactly what these costings are going to look like. As we move forward through the business planning cycle, we are going to be prioritizing those recommendations and some of those lifts and the needs of the fire department and balancing those against all the other elements of the city needs. We'll be bringing across through business planning, like I said, those incremental requests prioritized and as part of that overall process. So while we are having a recommendation to approve the master plan and to create an implementation plan, it's certainly meant to be tempered and to be incremented in such a way that is balanced and sustainable. We certainly have enjoyed the process of getting to where we are with the master plan. Like I said, I'm quite pleased with where we are. I think it represents the community where we stand today and where we plan on going forward. It sets the tone for working documents so that we can continue to reevaluate our position on an ongoing basis. Acknowledging that a lot of the recommendations in this are a significant vertical lift in terms of investment in the fire department. Really what we want to do is on a move forward basis is smooth these sorts of incremental investments in as we move forward. So that's my little spiel here. Like I said, we have Mr. Polsom of Firewise Consulting, who is the author of the report. I'm happy to receive and speak to any questions that you might have, as well as Mr. Polsom behind me. And then the recommendations are that council approve the master plan or advance it to council from end, as well as develop a implementation plan that will be brought forward through business planning cycles.
Thank you, Chief. Looking for a motion, please, to move this item to the next council meeting. And that's moved by Councillor Youssef and seconded by Mayor Rumi, and opening the floor to any questions, please. Mayor Rumi.
Thank you very much for the presentation. More of a process question, perhaps for Mr. Hartman. If we approve today, what is the next step? How does that fit into the overall picture? Please.
Thank you, Worship. To yourself, members of council, the process, just like we did with the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, is we're proving this in the context of it. And as the chief has indicated, he's working with our senior staff on what an operational strategy and implementation strategy looks like as we go forward. And that'll form part of the conversation as we get into business planning in the fall. As you're aware, there are some heavy costs that are associated, identified in the Fire Master Plan. In my world, this is another set of jigsaw puzzle pieces that we need to know. And so now that we have those known variables in front of us, we're able to start working way on how this lines up with things that have been identified in the Strategic Transportation Plan, things that have been identified in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, and things that have been identified in the Fire Master Plan. So part of our balancing act going forward for process is to bring back a set of priorities that align with council's strategic plan, and that we fully look at what those financial costs are as we move forward into the financial conversations for the 2024 budget year. And staff need a bit of time to be able to working on that. I don't see anything in the Fire Master Plan other than it's really good data that we can use to create the operational strategies that are going to move the department into meeting the needs of 100,000 residents, as well as meeting the future needs of 150,000 residents. So from staff's end of it, I think Mr. Paulson, and you've heard from the chief, has done a fulsome report. Whether or not we agree, disagree with all the findings, that's where the operational pieces will fall into play. And this gives us that kind of 10,000 foot vision of what we can do as we build out the operational plans and the financing strategy with people like Ms. Nolan and Mr. Thompson, as we figure out how to fund not only fire and parks and rec and transportation and all the infrastructure requirements, but it's just one more piece of the puzzle. So if council has concerns about the Fire Master Plan and the detail in it, that's why we're here today, is to discuss those items and then bring this forward to council for approval. From the administration side, it's giving us another piece of puzzle that we need to solve as we move forward, putting and charting the path of the future for Maple Ridge.
Thank you. So just a quick follow-up to your comments. When we go into budgeting for next year, council will still have a say in how this is rolled out based on budgeting and financing and so on and so forth, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Rumi. Looking for any further questions from council? Seeing no further questions, calling for a vote, please, to move this item to on whether or not to move this item to the next council meeting, and that passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. I always
Thank
sleep
you
better
very
at
much.
night knowing that we have a
Appreciate your time.
wonderful fire department. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
The next item on the agenda is item 10, Community Forum. Participants in the Community Forum are reminded that there should be no discussion of public hearing bylaws which have not yet reached conclusion. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak to council. A second opportunity may be provided once all speakers in the queue have had an opportunity to speak. The total time allotted Community Forum is 15 minutes. If you wish to inquire about additional opportunities to address council, please contact the corporate officer. For members of the public who would like to speak during Community Forum, if you are participating electronically, please use the raised hand icon, and when you are called upon, please turn on your camera and clearly state your name and city of residence before beginning your comments. If you are attending the meeting in person, please come forward to the podium when the chair invites speakers and clearly state your name and city of residence before beginning your comments.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Does anyone from the public wish to address council? Looking around council chambers, those in person, and looking online, looking over at the clerks. I see a head shake from the clerks. And anyone in person wishes to speak? No, thank you very much. Seeing no questions, Madam Clerk.
The last item on today's agenda is item 11, adjournment.
Wonderful. I guess we are adjourned.